Welcome to the space beyond right and wrong. In the last video we learned about the concept of non-violent communication. There is another quite similar and somewhat simpler model, the FBI feedback formula. The letters FBI stand for feedback, behavior and impact. This model of communication has proven to be particularly effective in situations that are emotionally charged, whether negative or positive. And quite honestly, you remember from the last video, we are humans and not robots. In this sense, almost every situation is emotionally charged in some way. The order in which you apply the 3 steps is up to you. Let us start with feeling. Just describe which emotions the action or words of the other person activated in you. Please be as precise and accurate as possible. Generalizations like "this makes me sad" or "happy" are not really helpful in this sense. More precise would be curious, self-confident, hopeful, or reticent, insecure, apathetic. Let's move on to behavior. Describe objectively and fact-based the specific situation that caused this feeling in you. It's very important to describe only one, really only one specific and concrete situation, and more importantly, do not use generalizations or make judgments. Last but not least, impact. Tell the other person what possible consequences this behavior can lead to in the future for you or the team or even the whole organization, given the behavior does not change. My personal preference is, however, a different order. First, I describe the behavior, then which feelings it invokes in me, and finally the possible consequences from my perspective, which equals BFI. Let's just take the example from the last video. Do you remember? Johnny come lately arrives 15 minutes too late in a meeting. It could go something like this. Last week we agreed to meet at 9 a.m. and now it's 9:15 a.m. I find this disrespectful and feel demotivated. I'm worried that my motivation and commitment to our common project will suffer. It may well happen that the other person first tries to find good excuses or belittle the issue. Then simply repeat your statements one more time and maybe even a third time. As good as this model is for effective and constructive feedback and confrontation, it is also very suitable for giving a successful compliment and foster the strengths and abilities of the people around you. Instead of simply saying, "well done," be specific and describe exactly what action has benefited you, your team, or the whole organization. What feelings this has invoked in you and what positive consequences you think can result from it. This kind of communication is both simple and effective. You strengthen the strengths of the people around you and deal constructively with confrontations. You can use this model as an alternative to non-violent communication, or you can use both techniques alternately. Simply choose whatever you feel more comfortable with. With the 2 techniques from the last video, you now have a total of 3 concepts to create an open, constructive and solution-oriented dialogue and give constructive feedback. However, the conversation already starts before the actual conversation. We always communicate on 3 levels: verbal, non-verbal, and transverbal. You know the first 2, but what does transverbal mean? Transverbal is, so to speak, the atmosphere between you and what surrounds you. You come into a restaurant or a store or a company, and without anyone saying or doing anything, you sense and feel whether there's a good or bad atmosphere. You can easily influence this level, the transverbal communication, with techniques you already know. The way you affect other people depends very much on the physical and mental state you are in. And remember, with simple breathing techniques you can influence and balance your heart rate variability within a very short time, and you guessed it, exactly this has a significant influence on the people around you. Many companies already benefit from starting their meetings with 2 to 3 minutes mindfulness exercises. Take the time and prepare yourself briefly for your dialogue or meeting or presentation. And if, despite all the communication techniques you now have at your disposal, a conversation does escalate, have the courage and dare to take a break. It really makes no sense from a neurological point of view to continue such a conversation, because you're simply not able to access your skills and knowledge and bring about a solution. Wait until everyone involved has cooled and calmed down, and only then continue the conversation. Perhaps you might try a mindfulness exercise in between, such as the breathing technique. And last not least, take your time. You don't have to answer every question immediately, and in a dialogue you don't have to jump in immediately. I'm not aware of any case in which it would have done harm to think first and then speak. A short break even has 2 effects. Firstly, it gives the other person the feeling that he or she is really being listened to, and thus shows your appreciation. Secondly, it gives you the opportunity to rethink your answer or statement. Communication is a highly complex masterpiece. You are challenged to focus 100% in 3 directions. 100% on what the other person says, 100% on what this evokes in you, and 100% on the space between you and around you. What, so to speak, is created by both of you. So all in all, we need 300% attention. Another important point in this context: there are, of course, numerous other communication models. But most of these models are derived from communications engineering. The technical view in its models assume that a sender sends a message to a receiver through a certain channel, and the receiver then decrypts the message. The receiver then becomes the sender, and the same thing happens again. Sorry. We are humans and not machines, and we don't have channels. Communication is highly complex, and every communicator is always both receiver and sender at the same time. If we would have a conversation together, you can observe that while one of us is speaking, the other one is also constantly transmitting and communicating on the non-verbal and transverbal level. I say something and you, best case, laugh, for example. Well, just maybe. So, happy talking. Do not believe anything I say, but try it for yourself and practice the art of possibility.